Another quick note on the ablative. I realized I did this with the other cases, but I didn't do it with the ablative. I talked about what their names mean. Well, with the ablative, you just look at the beginning, and it's got the word ab in there, and that means from, and that's one of the meanings of the ablative, is from. That's a basic meaning. And latus, lative, this comes from the verb fero, tuli, fero, fere, tuli, latus. Latus means basically carried away or taken away. So the ablative has this idea of being taken away, away. Whereas the accusative, it's kind of like the accusative, you can think of it, something that is taken to a thing. The ablative has this idea of ablative, being taken away from a thing. So that's just a little thing on the actual name itself. And by the way, in Latin, all of these are pretty similar because the English names come from the Latin. Nominativus, genitivus, dativus, accusativus, ablativus. So that's the names of those cases. Oh, and there's one last case which you really need to mention, and I was trying to forget it before. Vocative, okay. And in Latin, voco means to call. The vocative is just the case for when you're calling someone. And when you're saying like, oh, Quintus, okay, but in Latin you don't say Quintus, you say quinte, mi quinte. And for the most part, the vocative usually takes the same form as the nominative, the subject one. So if you're calling, Caecilia or something, you say Caecilia, or Metella, you just say Metella. But when there's two little exceptions with the vocative, which we'll talk about later, but it's basically the calling case, the case of direct address when you're addressing someone. It's always like the nominative, except in the cases, in the situations of words that end in us, like quintus. Words that end in us, they change their ending to e in the vocative, and words that end in eus change their ending to I. Okay, so if you got quintus, you don't say hey quintus, you say hey quinte, quinte. And I try to use this in class. I say Robertule, Jacobe, okay, quinte, instead of Robertulus or Robertus and Jacobus. And then something like salvius, salvius. You don't say salvius, you say mi salvi, okay? Salvi, it just changes to that, salvi, ends in that vowel like that. Otherwise, you always use the nominative for the vocative case. Okay, I'm sorry, you can't see that very well. Quinte, salvi, mi quinte.